storm, but I warn that there is a storm. I'm not your favorite, but pretty soon know you will conform. So I would never leave the mic alone, calling up opportunity like the mic is my phone. My heart's cold and her love for me is so warm. She hasn't said it, but her stare was so long. She gonna feel me though, it's real.
Oh, and we're live.
Nice.
Dan Asaro, my man, my oldest friend, I would say, most likely.
Probably.
Yeah, so
Literally that old.
Yeah, man, I am so excited to have you. It's episode 2. If you probably didn't know that, so I'm pretty psyched to have you as the second guest. And yeah, let's start with maybe just kind of a little background on you and your experience as a musician. Started off mainly just playing guitar, and then maybe we could talk about that and your journey, like learning that instrument and where kind of how that led you through your interest in production, songwriting, and just the experience of like growing up and practicing an instrument with the intention of really learning it, and not just like kind of being a hobbyist and, practice here or there. Like,
Right, not a weekend warrior.
Yeah, not a weekend warrior. I've got a lot of my students are, the people listening to this are, really like in love with the drums. And while you're not a drummer, you're a professional musician, and you've got, they can learn so much, I think, from your journey, like as a musician. So yeah, man. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well then, I love talking about myself. Thank you. So excited.
Yes.
It's nice when people are like, please do.
Yes.
Don't we all? So yes, I started playing music very young. I was always surrounded by music. My parents, like were avid just music fans. My dad was always of the hardcore of the like rock scene, right? They were 70s babies, 80s babies, so to speak, in terms of being young parents with kids. So I got experience with all of the 80s rock, 70s rock, new wave, a lot of pop. My mom was a big new wave pop fan that just carried on to this day. So I was always surrounded by it. So I guess it was just going to be natural that at some point I would gravitate towards it. My dad always had instruments in the house, and the guitar that I still have today was like the very first one that was his way back when, my Hagstrom Swede. And there's pictures of me in diapers playing with it and sitting around it and walking around in heels with it because I was fabulous back then. But yeah, so I was kind of like, it was going to happen, it seems. My very first instrument was actually the trombone. I played trombone from 5th grade elementary school all the way through high school and even in college so that I could get scholarship money because everybody needs that when you're in college. But yeah, that was my first instrument really. But I mean, it was great because it taught you things like pitch and timing and notation and rhythm. It was really cool. But like, it's not cool really when you're in school, right? And definitely not from a social perspective. But I finally got that guitar again, that Swede, when I was like 13. My dad had it like in the basement for forever, brought it up around then. And I was like, I want to play this thing. And he would have it on his guitar stand in his bedroom. So when he wasn't around, I would just take it. And he had a lesson book around. So I would just grab the lesson book, grab that, and then late at night when everyone's sleeping, I would try to go through it and teach myself some stuff, which I did. And then eventually I got caught. And then they were like, well, you might as well take lessons. Which, yeah, totally.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Then I can finally start to play some of the things that I've been listening to. And at 13 is that point, as I'm sure we all feel, where it's like music now becomes personal, now becomes something you own. You're starting to go through that fun time of hormones, so your emotions are way more emotive, and you need something to get you through, which was always music for me. So being able to play it was cool. So yeah, I mean, at that point, local guitar store, shout out to Guitar Asylum, which no longer exists.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but right, Nick knows about the Guitar Asylum. But it was
Our next guest taught with you there, so for a brief period of
oh,
time.
Mr. Jackson, very
Yeah.
nice. Yes, that's very true.
Spoiler.
There you go. Heads up, folks. But yeah, so I took lessons there, and that's kind of where the journey began. And I mean, I'll say that like when it comes to learning instrument, you know,
Mhm.
there's back then it was different too because it's like the internet was a thing, but it was nowhere near as comprehensive as what we have today in terms of the quality of online lessons, the accuracy of online lessons, the notation, the availability, the variety of online
Yeah.
lessons.
Yeah.
Before it was like I don't even like YouTube was just a thing, like it had just
Mhm.
started at that point in
Mhm.
time. Facebook wasn't even a it was an inkling of a thing, but MySpace was the thing at the time,
Right. Oh yeah.
right? So it's like you didn't have a lot of resources. So it was like you
Yep.
went physically to guitar lessons, you went, found a teacher, you sat for a half hour or whatever it was, and they would write stuff out for you. You'd go through a book. And honestly, I really think like it was a good experience for me because I wound up with a teacher who was engaged in me. He was also like, you know, the Guitar Asylum was a place where everybody was like 80s rock stars, quote unquote, so to speak.
Right.
So everybody wanted to shred, everybody wanted to play fast, everybody wanted to, you know, rock out. So it wasn't so much like, here's your lesson book, go through the lesson book. It was more like, what do you want to learn? Which to me
Hmm.
was helpful because really my goal for playing guitar is I was always fascinated. Not, I mean, I love playing guitar. I love the riffs. I wanted to learn all the rock riffs, all whatever I can get my hands on when starting out. But I really wanted to learn how to write music. I really
Mm.
felt a strong urge early then that it was like, I want to know how this works. I want the building blocks of these chords, of these notes, of these scales, whatever it is. Because really what I want to do is apply it and make my own stuff.
Yeah.
and my teacher was very open to that. So it was funny because he was very excited to have a student that was like, you want to teach me like scales and modes and like key signatures and chord progressions? Please give me it all. What else do you got?
Yes.
You
Wow.
know, so he was stoked about that. And I loved it because it's, you know, I was good at, I don't know, I like things that are like Legos. I've come to learn in my old life that my brain works in a way where it's like the pattern stuff that I can put together, take apart, put together,
Hmm.
is what I like to do. So that to me, learning those scales, those modes, those progressions, being able to put them together, take them apart, rearrange them, is just me. So it worked out well. But that was like my real motivation, other than trying to be cool. Was
Was
trying
that
to, yeah,
what I want
yeah.
to let you finish, but I just
Go
want
ahead.
to ask that interest in wanting to write music, was that like kind of from the beginning, like 13ish, or
Oh
did
yeah.
that take, wow, that's really cool.
I really wanted to. It was like because I loved music, and it was really the thing that was starting to now shape my teen years. But there was just something about I want to make it my own. I don't want to just play the songs, but I want to make the songs because I really wanted
Yeah.
to be. I could tell early on like this was my thing. I really
Mhm.
was creatively. I had a lot of hands in like art and sports, but it was music that was like I could see myself doing this. So
That
yeah,
is awesome.
yeah.
And like, and I, so we didn't start, I mean, this is kind of roughly, I think, around the same time, but actually, before we go there, I was going to talk about when we started playing together, but we're going to do that in a second. But I just want to, what I really liked about what you're saying is your interest, especially with those one-on-one lessons with your teacher, in learning, like the foundation of playing your instrument, right? So the scales, I mean, even more advanced stuff, like, but learning key signatures, learning theory, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Your interest in that. I think for us drummers, there's an interesting thing where, especially today in the drumming community, where people feel like there's a segment of like really amazing drummers who are like, oh yeah, we don't really worry so much about our rudiments anymore or anything like that. And so if you're a new student, don't you don't have to get sucked into that. But I've always erred on the side of like, I think the rudiments, while contemporary music, contemporary drumming might not, you might not be hearing like these specific rudiments that we've known from like jazz or like big band jazz era or something like that, or marching band type stuff. It doesn't sound like that in music, like,
Right.
popular music, but like it does give you a foundation of rhythm to like build off of,
Oh
and
yeah.
especially for those drummers, we're a couple years removed from the pandemic, and for those young drummers who maybe started learning during the pandemic online on YouTube or something, maybe you only have a practice pad and sticks, like the rudiments are a great place to start. And so some of the people listening will probably like, yeah, Nick is always forcing me to still work on the rudiments, not like, you know, restricting them from learning anything else, but I always do stress that foundation or just the technique foundation or things like that. And so I think it's really cool to hear, I think there is that parallel into what you're saying as a guitarist. It's like your interest in scales, modes, key signatures, just music theory in general, so that you could then do the bigger and better and cooler things,
Yep.
even
Totally.
probably learning some of those rock riffs, right? It's like you might be able to learn a riff from a song, but it can only take you so far if you don't really know what it is you're doing. If you don't know what
Right.
you're doing, but if you do know what you're doing, maybe that thing can probably inspire something you're actually writing, And I think it's the same for the drums, with like a groove or something.
Yeah. No, totally. I completely agree. It's really what I benefited from was the blending of the two. I had my eagerness to want to learn the theory and learn the foundation, but
Yeah.
I also had the drive and the teacher that was like, well, we need to learn by applying, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like you were saying, like it was one thing to learn the theory, but be able to then understand how the theory applied to this Aerosmith song or this AC/DC song or this Fleetwood
Hmm.
Mac song then allows you to go, oh, now I understand what they're doing. I understand the key they're in. I understand the chord progressions they're going through. I understand how this solo relates to what's going on. Now I can go do that myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like being able to blend the two. It's like if you spend the time, a little bit of time on both, and really focus in on some of the theory and then some of the stuff you want to learn, but try to pay attention to how the theory applies to the stuff you want to learn. For those people, whether it's a guitar player looking to play or a drummer, now you can start to take those, you can appreciate those players' concepts, right? And then you can
Yeah.
apply that to your style and then branch out and make your own style. So
Right.
that's a
Right.
really
That's
important thing, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I love finding those parallels. And that's why, like, so far, the people that I'm bringing on and that I want to talk to, most of them are not drummers. The first guest we had is a former student of mine and who is a drummer, but now he's like the front man and guitar player in this original band, which is really cool.
Dope.
Um, but I think it's really helpful for us drummers to hear that the process is kind of the same in other instruments, and because I just think it's good to kind of connect those dots and to see, you know, how people get to where they're really killing it. And I didn't mention this at the beginning, but I should have. We've done a couple records together,
A few.
as a few, as LovePocket, and so people can hear your guitar playing. Like, so you all got to go check out LovePocket on Spotify or whatever, and you got to hear Dan's guitar playing and also his production. I really want to talk about that because I have some students who are into that themselves. They're making their own beats and stuff like that, and then wanting to kind of record, whether that's like working with a rapper or a singer or something like that. And I think what's really cool is, for those specific students I'm thinking about, our early work with LovePocket was kind of that very thing. Like, we brought a rapper in, we brought a singer in,
Yep.
um,
Totally.
and so I'm excited to kind of talk about all that. But before Love Pocket became a thing, we were in a band called Tainted.
Oh
Um,
wow,
and
we're going all the
uh,
way back. Very nice.
yeah, no. I want to talk. So why?
That's
Not
great.
not because I want to talk about that music. Although I do have an idea that
No,
it would be pretty interesting
should
to
do a
get some of that
listening.
music online again.
Yeah, we
But
should do like a listening one day of that CD that we had, our live
yeah, that one.
performance.
That we have the CBGB's one. There's one at some house party, and
Wow.
and there's the original CD that the lead singer Brian Muller and guitar player at the time had me and another friend, um, Mike Mangano he played bass on that. Do you remember that record that I gave to you? So here it is, everybody.
I
So
don't.
okay, so I was in this band called Tainted. I was in high school, and it was like a high school band, and we were playing like all of the battle of the bands, and all the things you do like in your local town. And I remember I was talking to Brian, and we were like, we need like this extra, we need another guitar player, like, because he was honest about his lack of being this. He didn't really consider himself a guitar player, considered
Yeah,
himself more of like the songwriter singer.
yeah.
um and so we knew each other through, because our families are friends. And so I remember thinking, well, what if I reach out to Dan? And we had recorded, Brian had, I don't know who he met. He was a couple years older than me. So he was a senior. I think I was like a freshman in high school.
Yeah, you were
Um,
like 16, right? Something like that.
younger than that, I think. Yeah, because Brian was like 17
Okay.
when I was playing with him. Like I think he was your age.
Oh, right.
Um, but uh, so I remember dropping off this recording because he had met some guy who was producing music out of his home, and it was like legit.
Yeah.
And so that was my first experience recording a record. It wasn't like a real studio. It was kind of like a basement studio, but it's still, the kit's getting mic'd up, and you're going through the whole thing, and you got the red light, and all that. And so this guy was close enough to a
That's
studio.
great. Yeah.
But we record. I think it was like 5 or 6 songs, and I remember bringing it to you, and I just dropped it off. I think it was something like where you then like had like a week or something like to
Hmm.
yourself with it,
Right.
and then Brian and I were, and we had found a different, our buddy Mike left, and we got a different bass player, and um, Yitzy,
Yeah, it's
and
a.
and we, great bass player.
Oh yeah.
But we, especially for that time, like we didn't have any bass players.
True.
But we were rehearsing like every day after school. Like every day, Brian would come over and we'd be like rehearsing, and he was always writing, and so that was huge for my development as a drummer. Like I was constantly playing with a musician, and
Right. Yeah.
I
That's
know that that's a
important.
special thing, because I know a lot of people listening to this podcast probably don't have other musicians to play with, or maybe they are nervous about, maybe they're in high school or something, and they're kind of nervous about branching out and asking somebody to jam with. I think Dan would agree with me. We can't stress enough how helpful that is.
Oh, it is
Like
100%.
to, yeah. So we had you had like a week with it, and then you came in and you wrote all these secondary, like second guitar parts to like these tracks. It was awesome, and that's what's on like the when we played at CBGB's.
Right.
That's like the band. It ended up being that band, and so the reason why I want to talk about this was like, like, so you're that I feel like you're probably either a junior or a senior in high school at that time, and
Probably a senior. I think I might have
senior,
just
right?
graduated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you might have just graduated. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, because I think Brian was like back a grade or something like that. But uh, but yeah, okay, so. And then we were in rehearsals all the time. Like, what was that like? You were going to school, I think, for music education, right? So, like, you
Yes.
were immersed in music, right, at that
Right.
time. You were
Yeah, I was in
teaching
college.
privately. Yeah. Okay.
That's right. I was teaching that began all of that because I think I was teaching. I don't know if I was teaching at Monroe just yet, but I had a
Hmm.
lot of private lessons, and I was working for like I was doing the on the road, like go to your home lessons before I got into the
Yeah.
studios for a while. So there was that, and then yeah, there was college in the morning at Five Towns. So I mean, but yeah, I mean, I was freshman in college, so they start you off on like the basics of like composition, the basics of harmony, the basics of I had like a guitar 101 and guitar 202 class kind of thing to
Yeah.
reinforce fundamentals. So it was nice to be constantly playing all the time. It was nice to always have your instrument and be getting like different takes because you'd have in college certain teachers that focused on one thing. Guitar 101 was heavy, both just intro to like notation, sight reading, that kind of thing, but also had a classical lilt to it.
Hmm.
Whereas in harmony, things are lent a lot towards, or like the music theory, they call it harmony. It lent towards the jazz side of life. So,
Okay.
and then you would also have like a, I forget what they call it, but it was some kind of like guitar. It wasn't a guitar 101. It was like a playing class where you had like a small jazz band put together. So it wound up being a lot of flavors. So it was nice. And then to come over after all of that during the week and then get to practice with our tunes, then you get to take everything you've been working on and then again get to apply it to a creative situation and make it your own. I remember making some of those parts. So and it was fun
Yeah.
because it was freedom, it was liberating. The tunes were solid because you guys had a nice like structure to everything and it was very well put together. So it was just like I'm just going to add ornamental stuff on top of here. I want to be the Slash to whatever this is kind of thing,
Yes.
and
Yes.
have parts that complement, but also create like a secondary melody to whatever Brian was doing. And honestly, if I remember correctly, it actually was pretty good, like
It
altogether.
was pretty. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
That's why. That's why I was just as I was thinking about today's conversation. I just was like it popped into my head that like there's these live recordings. We never got a chance to the four of us, like to what the band ended up becoming,
Yeah,
getting in the
properly record.
studio to record.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we do have, I think, I know the CBGB's one is like from the board. So
That
like,
was, yeah. That's our
we
best like take of it.
could probably master that, like remaster it, and just
Well,
see what it
we'll,
sounds
we'll
like.
take a listen to it again
Yeah,
and see what's up.
it would be cool. It would be cool to just listen to it. But they were good. They came out really good, and your parts were so awesome on it. So
Oh, thank you.
uh, I love. Oh, you're welcome. I love. I think it's really great for everybody to hear like your like what you just described about that point in your life of like leaving high school, getting into like being in college for music, but then all of the other things that kind of like you were immersed in music, whether it be teaching, whether it be playing in an original band. I'm sure you jammed with. I know, I mean, you had other friends you probably jammed with occasionally.
Yeah, all
It's like
college kids. Yeah.
yeah, right. So you were like, you were just immersed in it, and I gotta believe that helped you. Obviously helped your growth, right? It's like you weren't doing the weekend warrior thing, you
Yeah.
know, and even if our interests change, right? Like over time, like maybe we're in school studying a specific type of music or whatever, that can change. But like just being immersed in it is so it's just so good. It's just so good. So I really hope for the young listeners they can maybe embrace that wherever they're at in their own life, right? Like wherever you're at, if it's just getting on a more consistent practice schedule, or if you know somebody, or if you have a friend who like is tinkering at another instrument or maybe practicing, if you've never thought of jamming together, like do that.
Do it. Yeah. Just
You
get
got to
in
do
there.
it. Um,
Make the noise.
so
Have the fun.
yes. So we did that, and then we played in a bunch of different bands over the years after that. After Tainted kind of stopped. Well, we toured like at least a summer or two, like in the Long Island area, I
Yeah.
think,
Totally.
with them, and which was cool. So after at some point, I don't really remember. We don't have to go through the whole thing, but at some point, Love Pocket was founded, and that went through a couple different iterations. But we ended up recording at Transmitter Park Studios. At the time, it wasn't called that, but it is now, and with
Yes, it
Abe
is.
Seifert, and
Abe. Yay, Abe.
yes, and so I want like, what was your experience like? A, in a professional recording studio, B, working specifically with Abe because he's in Brooklyn. So for us New Yorkers listening, like, and you get a band together, that's good. You may want to consider checking out Transmitter Park Studio. So yeah,
Do
your
it.
experience, just being in a big recording studio like that, and then for the first time, and then working with a producer like Abe.
Sure. I mean, so, and to take it one step back is like prior to going
Yeah.
into that studio, right? We went in with all of our tunes planned out and demoed, right?
Hmm.
And so what we were doing prior to going to Transmitter Park was it was all at home, right? This was like the still I would say early days of proper home studio recording. The gear wasn't as
Yeah.
terrible as like prior, but it wasn't as nearly as good as everything is today where, it's a whole different class. So I just
Yeah.
remember like everything was done inside of like a basement apartment, at least on my side, through like an old Presonus interface into like an early Mac Mini, early
Yeah.
Mac Mini. Just using it
Logic
wasn't
or GarageBand?
not even at the time. I think it was Steinberg. It was
Wow. Okay.
Sequel 2 is where we
Wow.
cut most of those demos. But so like you're basically isolated, right? Because it's like you, or if it was the two of us together, that kind of thing, into an interface
Hmm.
to computer, headphones, speakers for reference. That's that. When you go then into a real studio, and you have a proper engineer, you've got a proper mixing console, you've got mic pre's, you've got. I mean, Abe had a plethora of guitar pedals, pedals for synth. He had a variety of synths at the time. He had that Mellotron that we wound
Yeah.
up using.
Yep.
His live room for drums that we tracked that and vocals in. I mean, it's a whole different world because now you're going from I'm in the space that I'm comfortable with and I have little to work with, but you make it work to, oh, now this is like real life, so there's a bit of nerves because you're like, A, I'm paying for this, so don't mess up. B, I have a professional watching me, so don't mess up.
Uh-huh.
And at the same time, it's like, what does this knob do? And what does that preamp do? And which mics are you using? So it's a wonderful experience to me when you go into any studio, especially if you're not an engineer or you just don't spend a lot of time there, to take in the entire situation because the nerves are nerves, but they're also a good thing because it's going to push you to want to perform your best. And it's probably the best, from an audio perspective, the best learning opportunity you could ever get is hands on in front of
Mhm.
gear, understanding why that particular engineer is going to put this pedal down, put this mic on your amp, put these mics on the drums, why they're multi miking the amp or the drums or even a vocal. And then
Mhm.
start to try to take that home so that, because after that situation, we recorded a wonderful album there. But then once we started to do more stuff ourselves, it's always going back to that experience. What would Abe do? I think that was one of our sayings at
Yeah.
that point. What would Abe do here?
Yeah,
You
that really
know?
was.
And then
Yeah.
start to grow that out. And then again, just like we were talking about before, you learn the harmony, you learn the tunes, and then you can understand what's happening so that you can make your own. It's the same thing here. Learn the application, learn the gear, learn how to put it together, and then how I can adjust it. So I mean, it was great because it was such a learning experience that we benefited from,
Yeah. 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 And
and our
yeah,
album
that's
sounded good. So thanks, Abe.
it. Yeah. No. Yeah. Oh man. All praise to Abe for sure. Um, that was yeah, that was such a great experience, and yeah, it's just great. I love hearing your like the way you just kind of recap that everything about it. What was exciting about it? What was nerve-wracking about it? But also like why like being nervous is good. Like why it's normal, but it's also, you end up most likely getting great takes,
Right.
even if there's a couple in there that are a little rough or whatever. But also, I mean, obviously every producer you work with or engineer you work with is obviously going to be different. But did you feel like, it's like it's being nervous in front of a professional like that, especially when it's your first time, right? But did you feel like how did you once you were in it and going through tracks with him, like did you still feel that like, oh man, like he's, I wonder if he's happy with that take or not, or did you feel like I'm like I felt like my experience with him was the once I got in there,
Right.
like he was just very warm,
Oh
and so
yeah.
like that kind of allows you to just settle in then and realize like, oh, this is going to be fun. I'm here because I should be here.
Oh, totally. I mean, the nerves on my side, like, has not real reflection on Abe. Abe is like, if you ever get to the joy of meeting Abe, Abe is like a tall lumberjack of a man.
Yeah.
But also is like, yeah, as Nick said, one of the warmest, like, most inviting people. That's just like, come on in. Don't worry about it. I got you. He's very
Yeah.
kind of like just smooth spoken. So he can put anybody at ease. I'm always nervous because I'm always
Ah,
judging myself and judging
yeah.
things you have to learn to do that less, which over time I have. But when we had started that was not me. I was very much like, oh boy, am I going to do this right? Am I playing too fast? I always speed up.
Yeah.
Am I speeding? For me, it took me a little while just to let that go in myself. But no, a good
Mm,
producer, any producer worth their weight in salt, which Abe is one that wants the best performance out of you. And from a musician, usually how to get that is going to be to put them at ease so they feel comfortable to do what they got to do. So, from a player perspective, the best thing you could do while recording in terms of that is try to calm down and, like you said, just enjoy the experience and take it for what it is. Kind of get out of your head. From a
yeah.
production standpoint, hopefully that person you're working with is also helping to do that for you.
Yeah. 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 Oh, that's great. That's gold. That's like huge for everybody listening. Um,
You're welcome.
and so, and that was like 2013, I think, because the
You're
record came out in
2014, so
2014.
you're right,
But I
2013.
think we started maybe a few days before Christmas in 2013, and then it like the recording, we did, I don't know, but we probably were in the studio for about a week, like all things considered,
Yeah, in a
you know,
week, definitely.
um,
Yeah.
because it was a 5 song EP that we did. So wow, that was a long time. It was almost 10 years ago.
We're old.
Yeah, I know. We're old.
Well, I'm old.
Uh, I'm old too, man. I'm 35, gonna be 36 this year.
Yeah,
It's
you're
not,
fine. You still
yeah.
got some time away from 40. Good for you.
um, so, um, from there, I think, I know with that project, we ended up shifting into a lot of, you mentioned at when we were at Transmitter Park, it was kind of still kind of the early days of home studio type equipment and just like getting that to where you could make something actually decent. And then a couple years later, we started to, work on some more music, as LovePocket. And that was more home based stuff.
Yep.
And you at that point were deep into like audio production and just all of that stuff. Um, Learning that, well, that's a couple things here. Um, was learning that similar to how you learned the guitar? Like, did you find that is there just like when you're into music, you're getting excited about something in music, is it kind of the same immersing yourself into it, or was there a different approach with the audio stuff?
No, I mean, yeah, in terms of immersing, absolutely. I feel like the only way to truly learn anything, whether it's
Mm,
audio, music, they say the same thing about languages, is the best way to do it is
yeah,
immerse yourself. Just go all in. So,
right.
in terms of my approach at the time, because I was not an audio engineer, I didn't go to school for audio engineering.
Hmm.
But to that same degree of wanting to learn how to make my music, I had reached the point where I could write songs, like we could do stuff, but having to constantly shell out money to not there are, and I will say, quality engineers are absolutely worth it, and you should pay them everything that they're worth because they
A
deserve it.
hundred
They put
percent.
in the
Yeah.
time. They know what's right in terms of what they're looking for, and there are great engineers out there who have a certain sound that will always complement you. That said, neither myself and I would assume you would agree. We weren't really in the financial situation to be in the
Yeah.
studio all
Of
the
course.
time,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
it's a real thing. Yeah.
I mean, at that point, I was out of college and living in Brooklyn,
Hmm.
right? And or at least I had made that transition. And you were then just finishing high school or starting college, something like that. Or where were you?
When we started after
Yeah, so you're in
the
college then,
first.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
After well, during and after uh the first record, first Love Pocket record. Yeah, when I was there, I was in college, and then for a bit after that, and then depending upon when, I think yeah, at that point, I think I was just teaching full
Oh,
time
okay.
at like if we're talking 2018 when like Stiletto Heels came out and stuff like that.
Oh no, I was more in the
You know,
noir era, like that right after.
oh yeah, right after. So I was in college.
Oh, okay. So like
Yeah.
right after Music Love, that one from the album, then we were like,
Yeah.
yeah. So we were both in like not, just we don't have that expendable cash to keep going
No.
to
Yeah.
studios. But diving into the side where I wanted to then learn more how to mix the music that we've recorded,
Right.
um, it was all about just trying to figure out the foundation. It was the same approach in the sense of like, what are the fundamentals? But instead of music theory, this was what are your fundamentals of general mixing? How should it be tracked? What levels should you have coming in that are appropriate? What are the kind of the general aspects of the mix process, from the editing to the leveling to the compressing to the EQing to then adding reverb, delays, effects, all of that. I spent some time because at that point now the internet had gotten a little bit better. There was a lot more information online that was actually comprehensive. There was a lot more classes that you could take both in person
Hmm.
and online for this kind of thing. So I wound up taking a bunch of online classes from a variety of well-known home studio kind of like
Hmm.
not yeah, they were like teachers slash bloggers slash podcasts people, but they had like a decent course, and I just kind of went through all of that and kind of took it in, mixing with all the other content out there. There's so much to teach a person how to mix these days out there. Mix with the
Yeah.
masters, Recording Revolution, Home Studio Corner. I mean, there's just so many things that you could sign up. I'm sure Masterclass at this point has a whole thing on mixing.
Probably. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I forget the other university, but yeah. So long story short, I took those and I
Slate's
kind
got
of
one, right?
just Slate, right? Slate
Yeah.
has one. Udemy has a whole
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
So, and not that we're getting paid by these people, just things to know if
Nope.
you want to go search it out.
No,
But
this
yeah,
is so good. This is so good. Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
took one of those courses from Recording Revolution actually, and kind of just got my hands wet. After that, I kind of worked. I just kept doing it. I just kept recording and then trying to apply what I learned and trying to
Mm.
apply what I learned up until it seemed to make sense and get a flow. And then the more you start to do it, the more you keep EQing a drum, you start to figure out why it sounds that way when you do these cuts, these additions, and how it should sound in the context of certain music. And then you own that, and then you can go ahead and tweak it. Same thing with the guitars, same thing with vocals. And then, by that point, once you've done it enough, now you're like, okay, I understand kind of what I'm listening for. And then I can now get creative with it. So, learning that foundational aspect of what are the general things that need to be done in what succession really allowed me to then get open and then allow us to get creative with things like creative EQ or delays and reverbs in interesting places, using pitch shifting. We were playing with like some of our
Yeah.
later stuff.
Uh-huh.
MIDI mapping certain synths to certain things where they shouldn't go. Whatever it was about getting creative with it. Uh, so it made a big deal. So that's like it's really, if anybody is really interested in going into the recording aspect, not just the playing aspect, now is the
Yeah.
time to take all the resources you have online, get into some kind of class, And the classes, I will say, like I took ones that were pre-recorded, so you could watch them whenever. So it's
Yeah.
not like you were
Yeah.
stuck
Yeah.
to a time frame. But it's like you have so much out there, and the tools have become so much easier, so much cheaper, and all very good. And there's just so
Yeah.
much that there's no reason if you're at all interested, just do it. Just
Yep.
grab a DAW, start recording, and play
So
from there.
I love what you're saying, and it's making me think about, our drum students here. Um, what's so cool about this part of your journey as a musician is it was all self-led. Like you didn't
Yep.
have and I'm always thinking about that with people. It's like, for me, I was like the same way. It was like with the drums, like I was learning the drums or production too. Like for me, it was, if I had a teacher, right? Like when I had teachers in drums, it was, obviously they would give me something to learn, just like you were describing earlier with the guitar. Like you would have a structure from your lessons, but then there was also this like interest, like after I practiced whatever X number of things that I had to practice from
Right.
my teacher, from my lessons, I then was still like, oh, I want to try playing along with that song, or I want to try and figure out that groove from that record. Or for me, like with like songwriting or production, when we were doing this LovePocket stuff and some of the other bands I was in, um, I was like, okay, I want to try to figure that out, like, or just on my own. It's like and so what you're describing here, this entire thing of, recording, like home recording, production, sound design, um, that was all self-led by you, right? It's like,
Right.
and I feel like that is so important. I feel like sometimes, there are students out there who take lessons and who are enjoying the lessons, right? But and you probably experienced this as a guitar teacher yourself, like back in the day. It's like you there are students we run into where great people, or and they're excited about the instrument, but they're only doing like the bare minimum, and
Right.
then they get frustrated about, maybe not seeing progress the way they'd like, or not getting to play that guitar solo the way they'd like, or that drum solo the way they'd like. But it's like, well, if you're like, it is important to have, I think, guidance, whether
Yeah.
that's, an instructor, like in person, or even if it's through online lessons, but like a virtual, like real person. Or like you mentioned, those pre-recorded classes are amazing. I've taken some of those myself. I did some of the Slate stuff, Slate
Oh yeah.
Digital,
Yeah. Yeah. They're
and
great.
it's good, and there's so much you can learn. But like, so it's helpful to have, obviously that guidance. But if you as a student or just like a musician looking to learn new things, if you're not actively seeking the next thing, on top of whatever the quote unquote assignment is, I feel like it's hard, right? To like really see growth.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's you've got to like growth only really comes from your personal drive. You can have all the greatest
Yeah.
teachers in the world to show you what to do, but if you're not going to take the time to apply it and like I mean over and over and over again, right? Cuz I forget the number, there's a scientific thing about it takes you so many certain repetitions to master something.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
so whatever that is, you've got to do it a whole heck of a lot. And if you're not doing
Yeah.
that, then at the end of the day, it comes down to you. So if you
Yep.
have the passion and the drive, you really want it, just keep doing it. And you might be bad at it, and you should be bad at it if you're just starting.
Yep.
So that's okay. It's the more you
Right.
do
Okay,
it, the
that's a good
better you
point.
get, right?
That's it. That's an
I
important
still
point,
could be
right?
better in many things. I still can.
that that's such an important point. Like it's like you might not sound good for a while,
Right.
you know, and like that's the key is just showing up the next day or whenever your next practice session is. Like the key is the consistency across a week, across a month, across, a year or whatever years. Um, yeah, and just trusting the process. But you gotta, like, I really feel like there's so many. It's like there's so much information available. It's never been I think there's never been a better time to learn an instrument of any kind, including production or songwriting. but
Right.
like I almost feel like it's also people like there are some young people who aren't taking advantage of that. They're just like it's like can be overwhelming.
Oh,
Maybe not that
totally.
they're doing something wrong, but it's like overwhelming. There's
Right.
so much coming at them, and it's like, okay, well then what am I supposed to do? Well, if I'm lucky enough to have a teacher, well, my teacher said just practice these 2 pages in my instructional book, and I'll just do that. And then, but if you're only doing that, I feel like you got to be listening to music. You
Yeah.
got to be trying to find that next thing.
Well, you need that motivation too, because you have to be inspired one way or another. Otherwise, you're just
Yeah.
learning technique. I'm taking drum lessons now, so ongoing education.
Oh,
I
that's
know.
amazing. I love that.
I'm very excited. But to your point, my teacher, it's really great to have a teacher because beyond the fact of having the personal one-on-one and teaching you the fundamentals of what you need to know, they give you, like I'm sure you've given your students, the insight of where to go. Because we were talking just a moment ago about overwhelming content, right? We live in a world
Yeah.
where there's now, instead of just 2 or 3 or 4 places that you can get online, recording lessons, let's say, there's like 1,000. And that for
Yeah.
YouTube stuff, they're a dime a dozen. So it's like, who do
Yeah.
you believe? But the benefit of a
Right.
teacher then too, or some kind of mentor, is that, you've been through that. You've gone through this journey and you can tell a person, well, actually, I've had great experience with Slate or with whomever. So now you're
Right.
getting this firsthand, like, oh, I've done this. Here was my success, or at least my journey. You might want to start there. Focusing
Yeah.
things down there to like taking your mentor's suggestion, focusing in one place, and then just going through it and see what happens. Now, at least you walk away with some prior, or at least now a gain knowledge, I should say, of what's your next step.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
find that one thing, utilize the teacher as much as you can for their experience, and then go out, start in one place. Just pick one and
Yes.
go from
Yes. Yes.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's one of that's one of the things is like there's so much information you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So you
Right,
don't know if you're consuming good stuff or bad stuff. And,
right.
yeah, it's, it's tricky. It's wild. But I love that. This is great advice. It's really cool. Like every step of this, like of our conversation, like of like all the different things we're talking about, like I constantly am seeing how it can help a drummer. It's like it's just learning something is the same no matter, like you said earlier, it's like no matter what it is you're learning, even if it's a language or something else. So it's really cool. Um, yeah, man. So what what has been what would you say for drummers out there?
Hmm.
What are like, are there any, and this is, I'm putting you on the spot. So if you're not sure, don't worry about it.
Okay.
But what are, because the majority of people listening to this are drummers.
Woo!
Um,
Go drums. Big fan.
yeah. So what are some drummers or some records or some artists that as a non-drummer but a
Hmm.
musician
Sure.
stood out to you? Now maybe that's performance wise as far as like, chops that were impressive. Maybe that's groove, just like really killer feel. But also maybe that's their skill set. Maybe I'd like, if you can, I'd like an example of each of these categories, because the third category to me would be um, drummers that stood out to you that sound excellent in the studio. Like they're
Hmm.
like when you're like, oh, that is a drummer that if there's someone who's wants to be a professional drummer, wants to be in recording sessions, that is somebody to maybe strive to be like professionally.
Sure.
So if there's any, and if there's a category that one of those you don't have anything for, that's totally cool. But what do you think? Drummers, pro drummers.
Well, okay, I forgot the categories now, but there was one supposed to be really good in
So
studio, and I'm sorry, what were the other ones?
studio, chops, and
Oh,
feel.
studio chops and feel. Okay. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I kind of feel like for me, it all rolls into one because
Mm.
I gravitate towards albums. I wouldn't say I'm much of a. I like live performance based stuff. I do,
Mhm.
but to me, it's more entertainment. I'm not necessarily watching for the the precision aspect of things, because nights will change, vibes will change, feels will change. Studio like recordings, album stuff is kind of where like I get geeked out on, because that's like, that's where the sausage is made, right? It's in the room.
Yes.
You're in the moment. You're trying to capture this essence in time. So this particular, this particular section, the way it's printed was so good that they committed it to, quote unquote tape or digital. And they said, here's what you get. So I enjoy that aspect. So coming from that, so from a studio perspective, let's say in terms of just like feel and vibe, big Stewart Copeland fan. Stewart Copeland.
Okay.
Love
Awesome.
Stewart Copeland. I've always been a fan of the Police. I got really into the Police in college. But what always was amazing to me about the Police, and then I'll circle to Stewart, was the fact that it's just three guys. And if you were to separate all of their parts, right, with the exception of Stewart, who always had, I'd say, the most interesting of everything going on for the most part, they were three solid musical parts by themselves. But when you put them together, along with what was going on just melodically, which was never anything crazy, but it was just, it sounded amazing. Like these were like big, full sounding songs, full of syncopation, full of just this rhythmic groove, from like three dudes from London who were all solid players, but it's like their parts weren't anything that if you learned how to play a bunch that you couldn't do. Again, Stewart Copeland aside. Now to his drums though, because Stewart Copeland, I felt like always brought together this aspect of there was an energy to it, there was a creativeness to his playing that was bouncing off of everything going on. So I guess that was my first interaction where, because I come from that rock world, we live in Long Island, or at least did. So everything was very centered around 70s, 80s rock. And beyond a couple of drummers in that era, much stuff was just
baby.
like... Exactly. BAB all the way, Zeppelin 24/7. And I do love Zeppelin. It just took me a while to get over the overload of Zeppelin sickness. But like Bonham, amazing drummer.
Okay, wait.
For what?
We gotta come back to that at some point. That's going to be a fun part of the conversation. Okay.
This will wind up somewhere.
So pause the Zeppelin. Go back to the Police, but we're coming back to the Zeppelin. That's a great little...
So going back to Stewart then, I got out of the 80s rock shock, but hearing him and how he was able to play off of everything, he's adding so much syncopation. He's going in between time, time signatures in terms of a 4/4 or then a half time, like creating these feels that were like, just like you're on this ride. Like I thought I was listening to 8th notes, but now I'm listening to 16th notes, and I have this kind of like, it was a driving feel, but now I'm on my back and everything's upbeat, and I just like his parts were always so cool. So his pocket was always so good.
Yeah. You got a great connection of like punk and reggae in his performance. I mean, in the whole band, but like you really hear that, like his just like what he did with the hi-hat and the cross stick to me always stood out.
Right. And he got creative with the reverb and the delay on the hi-hat.
Okay, talk about a little bit. Yeah.
Well, it's just like you had all of those doubles, right? You had they mic'd himself up in a way, and then they delayed him in such a way where he would be getting like these like slapback cross
like Walking on the Moon kind of thing, right?
Right, exactly. But it wound up being a theme in a lot of their stuff. So he was able to utilize some of that engineering prowess to kind of make that part of his sound and give him a different vibe there too. So, and his giant...
You see that with... Oh, yes. And you see that, like, there's a cool growth to the band, right? But because, like, when they really, like, the beginning of when they started out, it was kind of more punky, like, with a little bit of that, like, flavor that them to be now. But and I think the production kind of got better, right? Like as they started to be more creative as songwriters and players. I mean, Andy Summers is like unbelievable,
amazing player. Totally.
And of course Sting. We're not leaving out Sting.
We like you, Gordon.
but like as the band, as like the their sound, their songwriting evolved, and they're pulling from different influences. Like that's where I think you see that production that you're talking about,
Yep.
the creativity with that, and it's so cool to talk about that in regards to Stewart's playing and his sound on the records. Like it's so true. It's so true. That delay in the hi-hat and the cross stick in particular is really exciting and inspiring. And it's interesting as a drummer to try and properly cover some of those songs live with a band, because I really feel like people don't do justice enough to like really trying to learn those parts. Like you like Message in a Bottle is an absolute beast of a drum part.
Oh, sure.
And
I
like
bet.
and I feel like often, there's too many drummers who err on the side of just like, oh, just play like the simplest version of that. It's like, no, strive to do the best thing,
Right.
strive to get some of those bell hits that clearly were overdubbed, but like try anyway.
Exactly. Make it
Um,
work. Off the record. Do it like the
yes.
record.
So, okay. So Stewart Copeland, that's awesome. Is there any like anybody else come to mind,
Yeah.
or
So,
just a band? Like it doesn't have to be the name of a drummer. It could be like a band.
sure. Well, yeah, I mean, I'll say like, so I don't know a ton of drummers since I've always been
Yeah,
very
yeah,
guitar focused. I know
of
names, but I
course.
couldn't give you all of how great they are. The only two that I could say I know a little bit about, Omar Hakim, who's
Yeah.
like a
Oh
very like
boy.
super well known session player. He's playing on everything. Speaking of Sting, like he was with
Yes.
Sting through much of his solo career. But just in terms of such a versatile player that can do everything
Yeah.
from rock to funk to R&B to, just like he spans all forms of genres. He's very
Yep.
humble.
Yep.
But he's so just on top of the pocket. Like he's so just smooth. He's always grooving. I was lucky once. On a small side story, is my dad worked at an airline for a little while with some people who were connected to the music industry, and they
Hmm.
had this kind of backyard blockish party every summer in Hollis, Queens.
Okay.
So he wound up taking like me, my sister, my then girlfriend, now wife, to this party. So I brought my guitar. He's like, just bring your guitar. I mean, everybody's gonna be playing and whatnot. I'm like, all right, I don't know anybody here. This could be weird. So we pull up, we park, and as I'm carrying in, there's Omar Hakim in the driveway, just walking in, bringing
No
in his stuff.
way.
And he goes, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "Hi."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was crazy. Apparently, LL Cool J was hiding inside of the house because he didn't want to make
Really?
a ruckus, but we left before he came out.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
that's a loss. But either way, I mean, it was cool to see that happen.
Oh
So,
man.
but yeah, I mean, and I've actually I've seen him in passing in the city because I guess he either lives around here or something a
Yeah, yeah.
lot. So yeah, but I mean, he's just a tremendous player. And lastly, I hope I get this right, but Jamiroquai, as we know,
Hmm.
has been a
Yep.
large focus both for me and for us. I'd say through all the Love
Yep.
Pocket stuff.
For
But
sure.
I never at the time, until I started really paying a lot of attention on social media to Derek McKenzie, the drummer.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
dude is
yeah.
a beast. That dude, oh my
Monster.
God.
Yeah.
His
Yeah, yeah.
accuracy to what's going on in those tunes, since it's so heavily groove oriented, his
Yeah.
ability to just maintain a steady groove, to keep everything flowing in the pocket. He's playing against percussionists in this case.
Hmm.
And I mean, a lot of those songs are fast,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
the
yeah.
hold down this like 16th note, four on the floor driven beat and not fall in and out of time. Not to mention,
Yeah.
he's just very creative on his fills and on his particular,
Yeah.
his patterns that he likes to use. That I'm a
Oh,
big fan of his. He's
oh,
also a
so
great
good.
DJ.
Is he really?
He's a
I didn't.
very good
That's fun.
DJ. I think he does stuff on I just lost the name. It's Groove Tracks
Okay.
Records. So he
Yeah,
does
yeah,
this
yeah.
all
That
kind of
sounds familiar.
stuff. Yeah, yeah. So great DJ, great drummer. Love him to death.
That is so cool. So okay, those are uh, three great drummers and artists for people to check out. I mean, Omar, like you could just Google it, Wikipedia his name and like find a record and just
The
listen to it because he's
credits.
played, like you said, with everybody.
Yeah.
Um, did you play with MJ at one point? I feel like he might
I
have.
wouldn't doubt it. I don't know for a
Yeah,
fact,
yeah.
but
But yeah, man. Okay, so that's awesome. So all right, talk to me about this. Is just going to be fun
Okay.
because I know our history or your history with Led Zeppelin. So growing up on Long Island,
Yes.
there were two radio stations that basically were like if you were learning an instrument, that's like what people put on in every store where you would anything music
If you
related.
were getting
And
a sandwich at Subway, one of these two
yeah, yeah.
stations were on.
Yeah, so it was WBAB or Q1043,
Hey,
both of
hell
which
yeah.
were still around.
And
And
almost the same.
they're identical. Well, I think Buckman was first was like when our parents were young was a DJ was like a DJ on BAB, and then he left BAB and started Q104. I think that's kind of
I don't think he started Q104. I think he
no.
went to Q104.
He just went to Q104.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild, but he like his thing on BAB is what made like his playing, like his I don't know what you would call it, his playlists or whatever, Um, so it was just that it ended up being the same station basically. And it was all classic rock, but
It was.
very, very heavily Zeppelin. Um, so yeah, so they came up earlier, and it sounded like you were going to say something fun about this. So I gotta hear
Oh,
about it.
well, no, I mean, so here, I guess here's what I'll say to those learning to play music, right? Because there's so much music out there, and you might have
Hmm.
like a favorite band or whatnot, excuse me, or like just in one style of genre you like a lot, but definitely
Yeah.
look to like appreciate what you've got there and always look outside so you can constantly be taking in new stuff, new interest, new inspirations. Because like for the time, this is like again, other than maybe like Napster and LimeWire was a thing,
Oh wow.
but
Yeah.
the primary sources of music was still radio, or
Uh-huh.
CDs. Sorry, CDs. Obviously,
Hmm.
we're not
Hmm.
that old. But Led Zeppelin was on all the time. So when we were driving to work, to school, back and forth from studio, it was like every other song. It would be like, here's an Aerosmith song, Led Zeppelin. Here's a Police song, Led Zeppelin. Here's a Beatles song, lots of Beatles too, Led Zeppelin.
Yes.
To the point where, as much as I liked Led Zeppelin, I was like, I can't ever listen to Led Zeppelin ever. It was just so much that I
Yeah.
wound up being like physically and emotionally against Led Zeppelin, surely because I was too saturated by it. Even my wife, my girlfriend at the time, she came from Boston. Boston, they don't do a lot of classic rock. They do a lot of alternative rock. So Nirvana,
Right. Right.
why am I blanking now?
Like
10. Pearl
Soundgarden,
Jam,
Pearl
Soundgarden,
Jam. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that was her thing, amongst with like some of the more alt stuff too. So she didn't really know Led Zeppelin until she came here. So she's starting to listen to it, be like, this is great. And I'm like, oh,
Oh no.
because that's when Mothership came out, and she's like, "Oh, this is
Yeah.
a really good album." I'm like, I know, but
Yeah.
but anyway, by branching out, I found a lot of other great interests. But now I've come back. I listen to more Led Zeppelin now than I have in like quite a
Wow.
while.
Wow. That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing. And
circles,
see,
man.
like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that's really cool. I think it's there's something there that I think is important for people to really dwell on, which is exactly what you said at the beginning of that about you know you might have your favorite thing, your favorite drummer to listen to, or your favorite band to listen to, or your favorite artist to listen to, but try to branch out a little bit. And so we could get consumed in that one drummer or that one artist or that one producer,
Right.
but then like all of our playing I think can end up sounding like that thing, whatever that thing is, right? It's like you can end up just almost like imitating without consciously doing it. Like you're imitating, if you're a drummer, you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a drummer. You can end up imitating John Bonham, right, without
Right.
knowing it,
Right.
or but the same could be said for any genre. So like if you're you know listening to a lot of Prince stuff, you might end up playing like one of his drummers, or if you're a guitar player, you might end up playing like his guitar playing or something like that. I don't know.
Sure.
But so I think that's a really important thing is like, even if you're getting so much that's actually good from your love of that particular artist, force yourself to branch out a little bit. And it doesn't have to be you don't have to maybe force yourself immediately to branch out stylistically. Like
Right.
if you're loving classic rock, stay in that and enjoy it, but get some of the other people. Or if you're loving R&B or if you're loving dance music, like just don't stay in that one thing, try to hear some other artists within that genre. And then eventually, right, it's like you start to maybe get into some other genres or something.
Right. But then you inform your own tastes, your own likes, and then that's going to shape your music and how you play. And then it's like if you're borrowing a little bit from this person and that person, now you're blending these two styles that all of a sudden it's now you. So
Yeah.
the only way to really make you is to find out what you like and mix it all together.
Did you ever find that to be like, was there ever a time in your development where that was challenging to do? Like to feel like, did you struggle at any point feeling like, what, the stuff I'm playing or the stuff I'm writing or the solos I'm taking, they're just sounding too much like person X that I love or band Y that I love. Do you ever have that or no?
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing where it's like, yeah, if you're kind of inside of one zone, like your headspace is in one genre or something, then you're gonna
Mm.
like on from a guitar standpoint, it's like I'm gonna want to lean into what that genre looks like. So here it is. But you do that, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, this sounds like all the other thousands of rock songs or funk songs or R&B songs there is, right? And like in certain genres where it's like you'll vamp on one thing for over and over, like a funk tune, how do you keep that
Mhm.
interesting, right? But that's then where it's like, well, what other things do I know that might lend to this, but maybe I could tweak? So instead of just staying like, if I'm playing a rock tune in that one driving style of situation where I'm using like on the guitar side, like a pentatonic style minor scale or blues scale, maybe now, well, I know a little bit of jazz. I played a little bit of that and, whatever, or I've learned a few country licks at some point. What if I
Mhm.
take those aspects, right? What if I take some of
Mm.
those bendy things, some of those accidental chromatic lines and stick it in here? See what happens. Now you're starting to create your style, your vibe,
Yeah.
that kind of thing,
Okay.
So that's why branching out, like getting good at one thing so that you can play is important. But as you're branching out, picking up new stuff that might interest you, that's where you're going to mesh things and make it your own.
That's great. I think that's helpful. That's going to be helpful for a lot of people to hear. Because I know it's something that like, I mean, I struggled with that too at different points where I'm like, oh man, like I keep approaching this style in like a one drummer way, or I keep approaching my fills in a particular band's way or something like that, so and it was the same process. Like you have to try to get into other things or just force yourself to hear other things um, or maybe it's a technical thing, like to circle back to the beginning of the conversation where we were talking about like your foundation and your early lessons with, being interested in theory and scales and modes and all that stuff. And I kind of in that to rudiments. It's like there were times in my drumming where I was like, what, maybe I don't have a greater enough understanding of moving through certain groupings. Maybe I should work on that for my fills a little bit to maybe open and it's like you're starting to expand your language a little bit on the instrument, right?
Sure,
So it's kind of the same. It's like another version of that. Like expand your influence as far as what you listen to, but maybe it's also a thing of like you said, pulling in, a particular, like you said, I think you said the chromatic scale or something like that, pulling in a particular scale and kind of bringing that into maybe a genre you don't normally think about doing. And then it's all of a sudden you're kind of speaking a language that's very much you. It's the same
right.
thing with the drums, right? It's like
Yeah.
if you're only doing triplet fills, then you're only going to sound like that. That's going to sound very classic rock,
One sound, right?
Yeah. And maybe you need to listen to something that's like more linear drumming. Like maybe you need to listen to like Dennis Chambers play or something, or
Yeah, totally.
grab some kind of like fusion record or something and just hear what's going on there, or listen to Tower of Power, you know, and listen
Oh,
to
there you go. Ooh,
the drumming on that, David Garibaldi or something. You know,
there
it's
you
like you
go.
start to all of a sudden get these, even if you're only playing rock, but that can influence your band, you know, or just you as a new, young, or old, uh, you know, drummer, aspiring pro drummer, you know.
Yeah. Who was the drummer for Journey again?
Steve
Steve
Smith.
Jordan. Oh, Steve Smith.
Steve Smith.
Sorry.
Jordan. No, that's okay. Smith is unbelievable. They're both unbelievable, the Steves. Jordan Jordan's got so many good stories. He, I mean, most people nowadays probably know him from like playing on John Mayer's, like Continuum, and
Oh, okay.
I think Battle Studies, and
Gotcha.
he's played on a couple of those records. But like, he has a great story about, um, I think it was like in the '80s. He lived in Manhattan or something like that,
Okay.
and there was like a really bad snowstorm, and some of the great players lived just outside of Manhattan. So there
Oh,
was this crazy like blizzard or something like that, and he was trying to break into the session scene,
okay.
but the greats like couldn't get in, like your Steve Gads, you know, couldn't get
They're
in.
snowed out.
And so Steve Jordan was like at the time he was young, so he was like the B level call, you know,
Gotcha.
even though he
Second
was
up.
an A level player, but like he
He was
was
like,
not known yet, you know.
right, right.
That's how he got his way in. Like he made himself so available in the sense that like he physically lived so close to the studio that it was like, oh, if you can't call like the really great person, well, give me a call. But Journey was Steve Smith. Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, so before I go into the Steve Smith thing, I will say I think you brought up just a very good point with that story. Is and I feel like this is a life lesson. Is like 80%
Mhm.
of winning in general is showing up. Just go do a
Oh
thing.
yeah.
Just be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
it doesn't even matter if you're any good to begin with. Just be there to get the experience, and then as
Yeah.
long as you just keep showing up, eventually good things will happen.
That's so true.
Regardless, doesn't matter what it is. But I was saying Steve Smith because I know that Steve Smith's played on a bunch of like fusion-y records too. So it's like he
Mhm.
was in Journey. He did all of that classic Journey '80s big hair kind of stuff, which
Oh
was
yeah.
great. But then I know he played in like Vital Tectones for a while.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was a fusion guy on the outside too. So he was playing in
Yeah.
both worlds, doing his own thing.
He's an unbelievable clinician too. Like you go, like you go to these clinics and like you see the fusion side of him come out because he's like, he's not just playing like some backbeat stuff. It's like some really ripping, crazy technical drumming, which is, yeah, I mean, that speaks to what you're saying. It's like, learn as much as you can, really.
Yeah, totally.
Um, well, that's awesome. And I love that now you're listening to Zeppelin a little bit, a little
A little
bit.
bit, a little bit more. I
Um,
can appreciate it
that's
without
just
getting
fun.
angry.
That's just so fun. That's so fun. Um, so, what are you doing nowadays? What's happening?
Not a whole lot. I'm
That's
learning to
okay.
play the drums. That's
Well,
my
that's true.
intro
You mentioned
creative
that.
thing.
That's that's amazing.
I've done a lot in the
Um,
audio side because of how my job is in audio now. So it's like I've spent a lot of time learning and kind of
mhm.
growing in my engineering prowess to keep getting better.
Yeah.
Speaking of always being able to get better, I too can always be better. So I've spent a
Yeah.
lot of time on that. I've also just been learning other sides of audio in
Yeah.
my time. So I've done a lot of education on location sound and basically sound for movies and sound for film. And then just things like installation sound.
Mhm.
Because you don't realize it until you really start to pay attention to all of the speakers around you, just how important audio is to your life, and in that case, music is. But how often there is always some form of speaker system around you to alert you of things, to play background music, to do whatever it is, to set a mood for ambiance of a theater or
Absolutely.
an artistic space. So it's been a lot of more, little less music these days, a lot more audio centric situations.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's always fun. I definitely encourage those who want to learn audio engineering as a part of their playing and recording because it all goes hand in hand. Learn to play the
Yeah.
drums, learn how to record yourself. I know you've been doing it for a long time with Abe too. The
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
two mic in the basement setup, Classic.
Gotta do it.
Great way to go.
You could do so much with that.
Totally.
There's a
Absolutely.
great drummer. There's a great drummer I follow online who's got like a little home studio, and what I really love is like so often he's making videos with one room mic, and he's just like changing out the mic and kind of showing you that like, hey, you can get like a really great sound. Like, or just at first it might just be interesting. Like maybe you don't know exactly what you're doing, but like test it out, test the placement within the room, and so if you're recording like that, I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I think like a lot of times, drummers in bands and stuff, or just bands, right? You're in a band, you can, or you're working with an artist, you could think you need to be in the big studio. And like, while that is obviously the best case scenario, don't not try something at home. You might actually create a really, really cool sound that could help define the music you're making.
Totally. It's super important. And I mean, either way, you're just cutting your skills. But so many great records and early records, right? I mean, we're done with one, maybe two mics on a kick, on a drum rather, setup. So it's like, it's not like, I feel like everybody thinks these days, oh, well, if I have a 7-piece drum kit, I got to have at least 9 to 11 microphones.
It's one of my least favorite.
It's actually awful when you're recording with that many microphones. So less is more when you're recording. But especially if you're in, even if you're in a not great room, you're just cutting your chops. If you're in a decent room, then, sometimes all you need is 2 microphones. So I just encourage that. But then, from a learning standpoint, to record yourself, to play back, I know for me, I'm sure for you, to be able to listen and be like, oh, I'm sounding good here. Things I could work on. I'm rushing. I'm a little bit out of time here. My 16th notes, maybe my like left hand, if you're right-handed, sounds a little weaker than the other. That kind of thing. Things that you can then start to like pick and work on. That just makes you better.
Yes. Oh, I'm so happy to hear you say that too. That's so true.
Oh yeah.
I think I annoy my students often with, are you recording yourself? No, why not? I don't want to listen to myself play. You got to. Like, it's
Think
the
of
way
all the content you can now put on Instagram, kids. Come on.
Oh,
Record yourself play.
And TikTok.
Right. But tell your parents.
Yes. There's enough teenagers and early college students who are listening to this.
Never mind. Do your own thing.
Yeah. No, this is great. So, thank you, Dan. Thank you. You've been super, super generous with your time here. It's been, I think, an hour and a half. So,
sick.
Or close to it. Thank you so much. And I think there's so much good stuff in here.
Totally, man.
So,
whatever you need.
All right. So I'll let you go. Thank you so much. Dan Asaro, thank you for being here on episode 2 of the Drum Shed podcast.
Woo. No problems. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was a good time.
Of course. And we got to do it again. And I think there was something I was thinking about while we were talking. Just this idea popped into my head, especially when we were talking about different artists, different drummers and stuff. It'd be interesting to maybe do like a special episode where maybe we're tailored towards like specifically analyzing like talking about a specific record or specific band, or like from a production standpoint, from a drummer standpoint, from a guitar, like maybe that could be really fun.
Certainly.
Because I've really liked your insight, and I think it's going to be really helpful for people. Your insight into like what you were talking about Stewart Copeland and the Police, talking about getting different influences in, like how you brought in like Omar Hakim and drummers like that. So I think that could be a really fun, like kind of side episode, like of the podcast, like kind of do like specific genre specific or album specific conversations, and maybe they're shorter form, maybe it's like a shorter conversation, but who knows? I mean, if we're really into it, we could really just go off, but I don't know.
We can let the listeners decide on what they want to hear, and then we can analyze it.
We'll do like a poll. What do you want us to talk
What
about?
do you guys
There
want
you go.
us to talk about? There you go.
Yes, but it's got to be an artist. Like I'm not like gonna randomly talk about some.
No, we're talking about
Man,
songs to
it's-
analyze. Yeah, nothing else.
Yeah. That would be fun, dude. Okay, that's really cool. All right, I'm glad you like it. Listen, Dan, thank you so much. Everybody, check out his work on LovePocket. Not for me. Yes, I'm a part of it, but specifically because of Dan's guitar playing, his songwriting, his production. It's just awesome. There's 3 or 4 albums, I think. 3 or 4 pieces of work, I think.
At least 3, and then some
At least
randos.
3, a couple singles, just like really, really good stuff. Also, I just want to say before we wrap up here, he also is a co-writer on 2 of the songs on the band Ace Nation, which I was also a part of. But he was a co-writer on the song Good Vibes and also on Beat Light. The majority, like the riff of Good Vibes, that's totally him playing guitar. And also, I think the majority of the structure of Beat Light was all you. Chord progression, like, etc. So just like to get a different flavor of, which I think is really cool. It's like if people go and check out your work on LovePocket as LovePocket, that's very like funk, groove, dance oriented. But if they check out some of that Eighth Nation stuff, like those 2 tracks, like they hear that rock vibe that we really spent most of today on. And I think that's cool to celebrate. So
Word. Cool. Thank you. That's exciting. Check it out. Have fun.
yeah. All right. Well, listen, man, have a great night, and I'll see you next time.
All right. See you next time. Thanks.
Peace.
Won't you let your fear go? Watch the money grow. I accidentally flow while I'm saying what I know. They call it rapping, but to me I'm straight into my soul. Even the mirror couldn't show the potential you hold. Don't fold, they tryna see my game crease.